Welcome to another episode of Raul's World of Synths. I am Raul. Today we're going to be looking a little bit further with the A106-5 12 decibel SEM type filter. In the last few videos, we've been doing modulation, observing kind of the behavior of the low pass and band pass filters, as well as a few other little modulation techniques and tricks that we did. For this video, I thought we would go further and sort of compare the two filters that share the same manual in the Doepfer family. If you look at the A124 website, you'll find the manual for this one, but it also makes special note that there is not a separate manual for the A106 since the basic functions are essentially the same. That is, the things like frequency cutoff are approximately the same, closed all the way on 0, closed all the way on 0, and then of course all the way open is all the way open there, as well as a few other things that we'll talk about here shortly. But since there aren't that many Doepfer filters that actually do that, I thought it would be a good idea to kind of show these two and actually how very different in character that they really are, even though they do share quite a few functional differences or functional similarities when you look at the face of them. So let's look at those similarities and just go on from there. So first thing you'll notice right away is they're each 12 decibel filters. So no brainer right there. Both of them have two separate audio outputs. So you have a band pass out on your A106 and a band pass out here. You have a combined low pass, high pass out on both of the filters. And then they also have the ability to, when they're set at the 12 o'clock position, that you'll get a sort of notch filter as well. Neither of the filters have self-oscillation, so that is similar in both type of filters. Now, resonance is going to still increase the frequencies around the cutoff in both filters when you're using it with the low pass, high pass out at the bottom on both filters. But when you're in band pass mode, this dial here and this dial here will actually make the Q narrower. So that's the bandwidth more narrow as you're in band pass mode. And we'll hear this in a little bit. One of the other sort of differences that we'll sort of hear, if we haven't heard it already, is on the A106-5, we have the polarized modulation input for CV number 2, whereas CV number 2, which is kind of in the middle here on the Wasp filter, just has a normal attenuator when you're piping in a modulation signal. So over here, you may have a little more control over the polarity of the incoming CV signal that you're using, whereas here you can just turn it down, where it's then going to mix with CV number 1, which I believe is right above it, right there. So you'll notice the position of CV1 is a little different on the two filters. But beyond that, we'll have to hear how it sounds. Now, both kind of share a very sort of pleasing type of distortion. And on the Doepfer website, it even goes so far to say, as for the, I think it's the A124, that around 50% on the level control is when you start to observe the distortion. And you'll also notice that same characteristic on the A106-5. However, as we'll see, they are going to sound quite different, and the distortion itself is going to have its own sort of different character as well. So with that out of the way that we've discussed them, now let's kind of go through and hear these things. I have changed the setup of the modules, if you'll observe here. I have both of the outputs from the two filters running into the mixer over here. And this one is actually the SEM type filter, which is input 3. And then this one is the output from the Wasp filter over here. I also decided to go a little bit of a different way for our note generation. So I cut the A155 and A154 and A156 out of the equation this time around. And I am using a computer of some sort, which is generating MIDI notes. And if you follow me down to the bottom, we're going to be using the A190 A124-1 MIDI interface. So notes are coming in to here, to the MIDI in here, and then my notes are going to go out from here and up to our VCO in the top section. So I thought it would cut down a little bit on the amount of time that we spend patching things in the beginning. And we'll just try it out because maybe this will be a little bit of a different layout and more simple to edit and stuff like that. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So if I go down to my A190, I'm going to be patching out from my CV number 1. And then I'm going to go up to my VCO right there, patch in right there. And then I'm going to take a second cable, as the A190 actually outputs a gate whenever it receives a note from a sequencer or other kind of package that you might be sending MIDI to this module with. So I'm taking the gate output there, going up to my envelope generator, which we've seen before in some of the previous demos. So patching in there. There we go. And then I have a couple more cables to do. So I'm going to take, let's see, the output from my envelope generator, and I'm just going to patch it into the CV in right here. And from there, I'm going to take, let's see, let's just do the saw wave because it has quite a few harmonics. And I'm just going to patch it into the audio input right there. And we have a little bit of sound, but I haven't started triggering my notes. So let's get those notes going. And this is just a little sequence that I put together myself. So hopefully you won't judge me too harshly on my creativeness. So here we go. So this is just a simple sequence of notes. Now we haven't started filtering yet, so let me get that going here. Let me turn this down just in case there's some sound coming out of that one. Okay, so let me turn my level up a little bit. So that's our basic sound from the SEM. That's a notch setting. So let me bring it over to low pass. Okay, now let's try that same patch on this filter. Taking audio in, out, going audio in there. Turning that up a little. CV in and CV in. Just trying to match up the frequency as closely as possible. Okay, so I don't hear that much of a difference yet, anyway. Oh, well, that's quite different. So you can hear quite a bit more distortion in the lower cutoff settings here. And you can see that the resonance really isn't that different. I mean, there's a slight difference. This one's a little higher than that one. But that might actually be a good test. Let's turn resonance all the way up to the top on the Wasp filter.